Hi, Neckvatal. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Beautiful. And thank you too for being here. And you see, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two main things. And I say this all the time. As a matter of fact, it has become an anthem because I say it so often. You see, Neckvatal, I want to thank you for investing in yourself. You are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, I was on a particular road, okay, just by the roadside. There's this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it. The leaves are so dry and it just look all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Nick Vado, just recently, I was on that same road. And this time around, something changed. You see, the mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately, I got the urge to, move closer and have a good look. Oh, Nekvado, when I got closer, it wowed me. Why? Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it. Beautiful green leaves, healthy branches, and not just mangoes, but ripe mangoes. So here was me staring and looking and admiring its beauty. The point is, the fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing person that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you see you got a request from me to be on the show. So thank you so very much, Nick Vado, for investing in yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing I could do about it. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's get started. You see, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. For I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one like Vado, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. And not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have you on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality information. And I'm totally convinced that our conversation today is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. We are just so curious right now. We want to know how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Brenda Neckvatal. I practice right now in human results. So I'm a human results professional, but that comes with a background of being in human resources for well over 30 years and combined with leadership. Um, a lot of what I've done has been in the retail space. So I have a vast understanding of business. I have a wide understanding of various business industries because I not only did I work in retail, but I also worked in aerospace dynamics. I actually worked for a space agency here in Virginia for a couple of years. I've been in the government contracting sector. So I've seen a lot of things done a lot of different ways. And I've actually consulted and worked to help support over 600 small businesses, as well as being an employee of 6 Fortune 500 companies. So I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen the corporate side of the coin, and I've seen the small to medium sized business side of it as well.
Amazing. That's a beautiful one. And I love that. Okay, so let's begin with the first question. All right. So,
Mhm. Yes.
how can one become a true leader in the face of difficult people problems. You got that?
Yeah. So in leadership, you're going to be dealing with a wide variety of people. You're going to have this really kind of an interesting breakdown. About 80% of your staff are going to be pretty reliable, relatively strong, very low maintenance, not have a lot of challenges and issues. And then you're going to have 10%, they're going to be like your top performers. Like they're just going to bring it home every single day. They are your absolute strongest winners. And then you're going to have your 10%, another 10% that is going to be less than desirable, meaning they're not motivated. To them, this is just a job. They tend to drive up drama. There's a wide variety of negative attributes that you're going to eventually wind up running into, right? And that's kind of how the layout is. Unless the company that you work for or the team that you stepped into is out of balance from that little equation, right? I mean, in a perfect world, it's an 80-20, 80-10-10 type of situation, right? And not every team is going to be like that. You're going to have dynamic shifts and changes. Leadership is messy. It's extremely messy. And it's never perfect. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to have your great days. Celebrate those. But you're going to have moments that are going to be pretty challenging. And that's fine. When it happens, that's absolutely fine. So to answer the question, when you're dealing with difficult people as a leader, how can you be a really good leader in dealing with difficult people? If you adopt a practice of taking 3 steps every time you deal with a difficult person, you're going to be widely successful. It doesn't mean that it's going to be, it's like you're going to fix the problem. You'll never will, but you're going to navigate through it faster. And that's the big goal. So the first step in dealing with difficult people is that you want to listen more and talk less. And the reason why you want to do that is that you're putting yourself in a positive power situation, which means that you are taking the time to learn everything that they are saying, right? You're hearing them. You're listening to them. You're listening to what they're saying. You're listening to how they're telling you how they behave through the situation. You're listening to how they think through the situation, right? So that really is the first step. The second step is that you want to ask good questions because you want good answers, right? So when you ask good questions, you get good answers. When you don't ask good questions, you get really bad information. And if you don't ask any questions at all, you're not going to get anything. So, and the reason why you want to focus in on asking good questions is because you want to get to the root and core of the information that's going to allow you to make the best decision moving forward. When you're asking a question, you're going to want to ask questions in a way that it actually eliminates the ego and it's only focused in on fact. And a lot of people will ask a question like, well, Bob says you're doing this. Well, that's not a really good question. And part of the reason that's not a good question is that is an accusatory statement. That's not an actual question. Like when people sit down and they try to address an issue, it's like, well, we've been told you're doing this. That's a statement. That's not a question. And what is going to happen is that person's shields are going to go up. Their defenses are going to go up faster than friggin', Star Trek Enterprise. They just go up immediately. And so you're not going to get through anybody. And so the other thing too is when you're listening more and talking less, people have a tendency to hide. They have a tendency to hide behind technology. And when that happens, that does not put you in a really good spot. And then lastly is the power of your leadership will always lie in your ability to follow up. When you are following up, you are in a much better situation because you're actually having the ability to monitor what's going on. And when you're able to monitor what's happening, then that means that you have an opportunity to go ahead and prevent any surprises. You have the opportunity to catch a lot of what's going on before it actually happens. And when you are monitoring, that means that your employees are not putting themselves in a position where they can just kind of run away. It's like they don't become a runaway train. You're just giving the opportunity to follow up, check in, see how things are going, give necessary feedback, and then just keep moving forward.
Awesome. I got that. Okay, so let us look at it from your own experience. All right. What are the key differences between a manager and a true leader? Especially
Mm.
when dealing with challenging personalities. You got it?
Well, yeah. So your personality and your ability to manage aren't really intertwined. Your personality is your style, right? Personality is how you connect with people. And a lot of people will look at somebody who is very straightforward as, let's say, for example, they would say, well, that, she's just terse, that's just her personality. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's effective at leading or not, or she's effective at managing or not. And those are two very different things. So your style is directly connected to your personality. If you are like, I could be extremely straightforward and not be angered or terse, but to me, that's very compassionate. That's probably the most compassionate thing you can do is just be straightforward with someone, because everybody wants to be treated like an adult. Nobody wants to be treated like a child, right? So when it comes to leading and managing, is managers really are there to check a box. Managers are there to make sure that the actual tasks and expectations are being met on a day-to-day basis. They have their marching orders. They're just going to continue to move forward. Whereas a leader is somebody that, yes, recognizes that we have things to do, but they have the ability to leverage employee assets daily. LEAD, lead, leverage employee assets daily. They can say, you know what, this stuff needs to get done. However, I can probably get this done faster if I put John in this position. Or if I move Jose over to doing something like this, we're going to see a different type of yield and a different type of result, right? So that's really the difference between the two. A leader, it's not so much about inspiration. It's about knowing how to best move the pieces on the chessboard so you win the game faster. Managers, they're only going to work with what they're given.
Oh, I think I got that. Managers are only going to work with what they're given. So more like
Yep.
leaders understands his staff or the workers, and he knows how capable each of them are. I got that. Okay, so what is the one biggest misconception about leadership that you've encountered? Can you share with us?
It's easy. So many people believe that it is like, because we look at it from the outside in, right? If we've never been in a leadership position, we're looking at it from the outside in. And even still, when we've been in leadership positions, we're looking from the outside in. We will always judge and evaluate leaders, always. And so, it's not easy. You are the lone man on the mountain. You are the one that everybody's going to turn to when things go wrong. And you're the last person they're going to look at when things go right. Right? I mean, it is, who the hell wants to be a leader? But it's so required to make things happen, right? So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And for people who have never been in a leadership position, they may, and I know this is out there, I know because I did it, there may be this sense of like identity that, people are going to automatically respect you because you're a leader. That is so not the case. A good leader, and I mean a really good leader, is one that knows that trust is the team's number one asset. If trust does not exist, everything is going to get done like people dragging an anchor across the bottom of the ocean. If the trust is not there, you're going to have to contend with so much more. And even when you get trust in place, you're still going to have to nurture it, and you're still going to have to make sure that trust stays, because trust can be lost, and it's a two-way street. If you trust your employees, but your employees don't trust you, you don't have trust. If your employees trust you, but you don't trust them, you don't have trust on your team. I have a group of people that I work with that everybody is all nice and friendly in front of each other. But there's about a third of that group that does not trust other individuals in that group. That's normal for group dynamics. Absolutely normal. So the big question is, are these the right people in the group? Are we going to be effective still if we don't have trust? And the answer to that is no. And over the past year, our results have reflected that. So I know that it's one of the trust issues that we've got. And, trust is just one of those things that you can gain it back. It is a long road to hoe, but it's also something that you can use and leverage as a strategic competitive advantage, as well as teach it as much as you can actually teach people to trust people. But it's something that leaders have to nurture all the time. If they let trust come off of the radar, the team is not going to be as effective. It's not that they won't. It's not that they won't. They will fail. They're not going to fail outright. Teams can still operate with low trust, but man, those days are hard and they're long.
That's right. Very hard and long. I got that. Okay, for leaders who are currently finding it difficult and challenging to manage their difficult employees. Okay, so how can they overcome it? And let's say they are listening to our conversation right now, and they ask, "How can we overcome it?" Neckvatal, what would your response be?
So there's two ways that you acquire difficult people. Okay, one is that it starts at the hiring process, but that is if you are establishing a new team or you're finding a replacement in the team. Okay, so it can start there, but then it will also start. Let's say, for example, you and I worked together and you got a promotion and walked into another team or took responsibility of another location with a brand new team, right? You're walking into that. So you adopted them. You're like, all of a sudden, you're the new one in the group and you're in your difficult people, you adopted them. It doesn't matter whether you start at the beginning or you walk in adopting them or somebody new comes into your team. It's all going to be the same. First off, you have to set the right expectations, and you have to set expectations that are firm and that are not going to slide around. The second thing is that how you enforce and uphold your expectations is done through your core value system. So if your team is working on a unified set of core values, that means that there's alignment. And you know it, when you don't have alignment, you know it. You feel the burn. So when your team is aligned, everybody is operating in the same direction. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have conflict. More than likely what you're going to have is you're going to have productive conflict. Productive conflict looks like, I think I want to do this. The other person says, well, I'm not sure that that's the right decision. And the other person says, okay, let's sit down and hash this out. And the other person's like, okay, great. Let's figure this out. Right. That's a productive conversation. That's productive conflict. Destructive conflict shows up in a number of different ways. It can show up in passive aggressive behavior where somebody says that they're on board, but in reality they're not, and there's some angst or consternation sitting within them. It could just be flat out like, hey, we're getting into an argument and we're not going to find any mutual. I'm not willing to concede to any mutual ground. I'm going to hold my position here, and I really don't care what anybody else says. Now all of a sudden you got two people that are going back and forth and literally getting nothing accomplished, right? So if you don't, it's a stalemate. People who have productive conflict can agree to disagree and still be very civil about it. People who are not capable of that are going to be in that deconstructive conflict or disruptive conflict, whatever you want to call it, all the same thing. But they're going to be the ones that are going to walk away from that, not achieving anything, even including, agreeing to disagree. And they're going to hold the grudge, and they're never going to forget it, and they're never going to get beyond it. Or they're putting their agenda first rather than looking at the bigger picture, right? Everybody's capable of this, but when you have core values that are there And when we wind up running into these situations, like, for instance, in one of the businesses that I used to work at, our number one core value was to do what's in the best interest of the client. And so we would, when we were in questions and we were trying to figure problems out, we would literally ask this question: if we do this, or if we don't do this, is this going to be supporting our number one? Like, are we doing what's in the best interest of the client? And if we cannot answer yes on that yes, this is in the best interest of the client, it's the wrong decision to make.
Beautiful. And that's a very interesting one. And I think all businesses should ensure that the client or the customer's interest comes first. Maybe that way would have decreased in all of those terrible products and services. Well, thank you. Okay, so to bring this to an end, Neckvatal, what would you like to leave the audience with, like a final thought? And to those folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've talked about, or ask you questions, how can that be possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I have a gift for your audience. So remember earlier when I was talking about listen more, talk less, ask good questions, get good answers, and the power of your leadership is going to always lie in your follow-up. Well, that's like right at the tip of the iceberg. But if you want to get through, like I was talking about earlier, is having conversations and getting information without having to deal with the ego, I have a free gift. This is a course. These are 3 questions, and I call them impact scripts, that I've been using for almost 20 years now. And they're super highly effective because it helps you get to the root of the question, of the root of the issue, without having to deal with the ego. And it's also the first starting point to actually getting in touch with me. So if you go to my website at heybrenda.com, that's Hey Brenda Dog. I joke that I have a Hey Brenda hotline because usually people say, Hey Brenda, I got this guy, I got this person that I'm having a problem with. So it's heybrenda.com or yobrenda.com, whichever one you want. It's the same one. And you fill in your name, fill in your email. Let me know. There's a little box in there. It's like, what's the one thing that wowed you, that you heard today that totally wowed you? Because I love listening. I love hearing that because I want to know what's important to people. And then what it's going to do, it's going to put you over and it's going to give you access to this course. And it's going to help you. You have to tell you what these 3 phrases are, what these 3 questions are, and how to actually use them. And I'll give you, for instance, when you're trying, remember I mentioned earlier and I said, there's an accusatory statement. Somebody says, well, Bob says you're doing this, right? One of the questions you can replace that's actually a much better question is, help me understand. So if you put that in front of a question, like, help me understand, how did we get here? Help me understand who's involved. Help me understand, like, what was the end result to this? It's an extremely effective question, and it bypasses so much of the ego because they can't answer it from an ego drama standpoint. And if they keep going round and round and round, well, that means that you're dealing with ego. If they give you a straightforward answer, now you got something to work with, right? So that's one of the examples. And if you have just that one person on that team that cannot answer a straightforward question, I promise you these 3 phrases, and then there's a bonus in there too, so you actually get 4. You'll wind up really being able to cut through and get to the heart of what's really important. So that is my gift to you and your audience today.
Amazing. Thank you for the gift.
Hey,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
So that's going to be the end of the show. Thank you so very much for coming, and thank you for, educating us and blessing us with these beautiful words and even the gift. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you too. Thanks for having me on.